Hello my friends, welcome back to another tutorial. I hope you're all keeping well. I've missed you all. Right, this time I am going to paint something, something simple but something that you will learn a lot from. I'm going to paint a lovely sky. A simple sky with very powerful clouds coming down, lots of sunsetty colours going, well not lots of sunsetty colours, but I'm going to be showing you how to create dramatic clouds in the sky just very easily, just using simple little brush strokes. Okay, that's what I'd like to focus on in this tutorial. It's just pretty much a sky on its own, but you know, a sky on its own can say so many things, and it can just give so much of an impact and a feeling to a person. So I think even a simple thing like a sky can make a beautiful painting, you know what I mean? Just something simple, but something very eye-catching with a frame would be absolutely stunning. So I'd like to focus on that, if that's okay. I've been very busy lately with lots of different types of subjects. This one down here, actually, let me show you. I'm very happy with that. That's the one I just recently did on my YouTube channel. That's fantastic, isn't it? You know, a lot of this is luck. I think a lot of this comes down to luck, and it's just working out. I wasn't happy with it as I was going along, so I was changing it a little bit, but you know, it seemed to work out. It seemed to work out okay. I love the light coming across the footpath. I think that's kind of what the painting is pretty much about light, catching light. So yeah, I mean, I have all my, you can see all the paintings, these are all my tutorials. You know, some beautiful, that's a beautiful one there. But I just keep all of these paintings. I have them for sale, but you know, these are some very old paintings that I have, and they're still here. I still have them all. So you know, I'm not eager to sell all my work as fast as I can. You know, I like just leaving them there sometimes. You know, there's some paintings that I have going back 2 years. So you know, it doesn't bother me if I don't sell artwork very much, because I just love painting, you know what I mean? So that's all my work. Okay, this is one I'm working on for someone. It's a commission. Little forest with bluebells. Little forest with bluebells, that's quite nice, isn't it? Now, I must prime a canvas for you. This is a 20 by 16 canvas. Now this canvas is very rough. I don't know if you can hear that. Very rough. So what I do when priming my canvas is I take some very fine sandpaper, okay? This is really fine, smooth sandpaper, and I give it a quick rub. Alright? Just to take off the top roughness of the primer. And you can see the primer. You see? It's just like a white dust. Then what I do is I take a water-based undercoat. It's a typical household undercoat, okay, look. Pure brilliant white undercoat. Alright, I add plenty of water into that, give it a good mix up, so it's nice and thin. Okay, you see? It's not too thick. Then I just go along and I give my canvas one coat of this. One quick coat. You probably can't see this going on now, but I'm just giving it one quick coat. And what that does is it just seals the canvas a little bit better, because no matter what type of boards you buy, they're always going to be primed with just a very cheap primer, okay? That's just the way it is. When they're made in factories, they're just given a very quick spray with the primer as they pass through the machines, and sometimes it's kind of hit and miss. Sometimes it doesn't get all of the canvas. So I think it's just good practice to give a canvas board just a very quick coat of your own primer. You don't even have to use an undercoat primer. You could just use a PVA sealer. You know, the white PVA sealer, like craft sealer that you might get, PVA glue, that kind of thing. Water that down with lots of water and give it one quick coat. That just gives the canvas a little something to to soak into it. It soaks into the canvas, taking the dryness out of the canvas. That's all. Now this will still be quite dry even after I finish this. But what I then do is I'll give my canvas a rub of some linseed oil before I start painting. Just regular artist's linseed oil. Now it's not the type of linseed oil that you'll buy in hardware stores. Where is it? I have it here somewhere. There. This is stuff that I bought in my local art store, okay? You can see it's for artists. It's just regular linseed oil. But I think it's kind of refined slightly. So it's not pure raw linseed oil. It's slightly refined and filtered. So then I give this a rub of that before I paint. Now I let this dry well first, okay? For maybe an hour. Leave this soak in. Then we're going to start painting our sky on this. And I must just get my palette ready. I'm going to change that palette. That's an old one. I'll put a new palette on my board and we'll have a bit of fun. Learning how to paint nice, simple clouds, but very effectively, okay? Let's try this and see how we get on. It'll be a bit of fun. Don't go anywhere. Thank you so much. Okay, here we go. Right, canvas is dry. Lovely and smooth. I gave it another rub with that sandpaper and it's lovely and smooth, okay? It's really smooth. You can just feel a slight grain. It's like a very fine canvas and this will really help. Okay, I better put the reference photograph up. There it is. Isn't that gorgeous? Beautiful sky. And we're going to have a little bit of an ocean as well. Just to have something there. Maybe put a white sailboat or something in there as well. Off in the distance. Wouldn't that be lovely? So, let's go. It looks complicated, but we can simplify it. All we have to do is do it in stages, okay? I'll show you what I mean. So we'll just do this in stages. I'm going to take some masking tape and put this across my horizon line. So this is where the land meets the sea. That's what I like to say. The horizon line. And I'm going to come down nice and low now with this. I don't want to go too high, okay? Let's just put a piece of masking tape across there like that, okay? It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. So don't worry, but reasonably straight. You know what I mean. Okay, nice upright canvas. My colours. I have a nice selection of colours here now, just for some variety. Okay, because we have lots of darks and lots of warms. So we have cool colours against warm colours. Again, complementary colours. I have titanium white, Naples yellow, a little cadmium red, just for warm tones. A little cadmium yellow, again, just for warm colours. I have some phthalo blue, some cobalt blue, just to have two different blues on our palette. Some black, any black will do. A little magenta for those pinks, and a little crimson for the warm pinks. Okay? If you don't have certain colours, you'll get by with just using one blue and one pink, okay? And one of the yellows. Let's get some linseed oil, okay? I'm going to take some linseed oil and a bit of tissue here. I don't need all this tissue. And what I'm going to do is, even though this canvas is nice and smooth and dry, and soft and kind of smooth, I still want the colours to kind of flow nicely together. I want to just oil the surface very slightly. This would be similar to using a liquid clear, if you're familiar with the Bob Ross kind of paintings. It's similar to liquid clear. I just find liquid clear is a little bit too oily. So I like to use linseed oil. This is kind of refined linseed oil. Let's just take a bit of that. And we're going to need to do this a few times. I'm just going to rub that across my canvas. And realistically, this will soak in slightly. Okay? It's going to soak into the canvas ever so slightly. But I just want to give this a very, very soft, very thin coat of oil, just to oil the canvas out. That's all. And now I'm only putting on the bare amount. I'm just moving it around. It's even missing some parts, okay? It's just very, very light. Because we have such a big sky, I like to oil a big sky like this. Because if you don't, sometimes when you're trying to blend in colours later, the underneath layer can be slightly dry, can start to dry off, and it can be difficult then to blend the colours together sometimes. So I think a little bit of oil just like that sits on the canvas and it just helps your brush flow. It helps the colours merge together just nicely, okay? And you don't have to do this, but I like to do it every now and then. If I'm painting on one big surface in one go, then I do like to use the oil. So let's get cracking. I have some turpentine with a little linseed oil in it as my thinners. That's all I use, okay? I also have a coffee. Coffee is very important. You must have a coffee if you're painting. Just take a sip every now and again. It keeps you alert. It keeps you focused, okay? I'm only joking. You know my sense of humour by now. I'm a traditional Cork man, Irish man, and so, you know, we're known for our sense of humour. Let's go. I'm going to start now. When I'm doing a sky like this, I try to explain my process, okay? I kind of block out of my mind all the detail, all right? So what I'm going to focus on right now is just that section of light blue up on top, okay? I'm just going to focus on that. And I'm going to paint in all of that all the way around here, okay? Let's just start. Let's get some. With a damp brush, a very slightly damp brush, pull some white out there. Let me make sure now this is recording. Everything looks good, yes. I'm very paranoid with stuff like camcorders and stuff like that in case something goes wrong and it stops recording for some reason. I just don't trust modern technology very much. A little bit of white, look. Let's get some white. Plenty of thinners, and I'm going to go with cobalt blue for this first. It's a very forgiving colour, so you can mix a lot with cobalt blue and it won't ruin your colours too much. It's very, very forgiving. So I'll go with cobalt blue, and then I'm going to take, because if you look at that sky on the reference photograph, there's a hint of a greeny blue in it. It's not pure blue, so I'm going to go with a hint of phthalo blue. And that will just give you more of an earthy kind of a blue. Okay? That's not bad. Let's go with that for now. So you can see the oil on my canvas. It's not really, really oily, but it's really helping my colours there now to flow right across my canvas. Isn't that lovely? If I was doing this on a dry canvas, it would be very difficult to get that in one brush load, okay? It would soak right into the canvas very quickly. I'm going to take a little more of the phthalo blue, and I'm just going to maybe take a tiny amount of black on the corner of my brush, okay? I just want to make this slightly kind of a grey, kind of a blue feel, just up on top. And then I'm going to just soften it kind of down into that colour underneath, okay? I just want a nice transition. Right, I'm going to give my brush a quick wipe, take off some of that colour, go back into my white, go back into my phthalo blue, and I want to just pull that down, and I'm going to go around kind of my cloud, okay? So I'm going to imagine the cloud starts from around there. Let me just take another tiny bit of thinners. I'm just thinning my paint and adding more as I go, okay? Okay, so I'm going to go around like that. My sky, my clouds come down like that, sort of at that kind of angle, don't they? Sometimes I would paint right the whole way down with my blue and then put my clouds on top. But we have a very warm area here with lots of pinks and kind of almost yellows, okay? So I don't want to kind of go over that area. I want to leave that nice and white so I can get some nice bright colours later on. So I'm just basically going around the main cloud here. I'm going to leave the main bulk of the cloud. Now, if you had like one or two clouds up there, I would just paint over it, okay? But I just want to leave the main bulk of my clouds here, nice and clean and bright. And then it comes down, this is a lot of thick cloud going across here. This is all thick cloud here. We have a nice bright spot down here, don't we? So let me dip my brush in some turpentine, give it a wipe on a tissue, so it's relatively clean. Let's go down here and let's get some, I'm going to go with crimson, okay? Tiny, tiny amount of crimson, tiny amount of Naples yellow, and lots of white. And we have that beautiful, almost like a pinky colour down there. And you can see I'm using very, very dry brushwork, okay? I'm using the bare minimum amount of paint on my brush because it's only a tiny little area. There's no point in putting huge amount of thick paint down here because it's tiny. Let's just make that colour a little richer. So if you want to make it richer, just add a little more paint with less turpentine. So look, just paint on its own. A little bit of yellow. That's Naples yellow, by the way. A little bit of crimson. Just pop that in there like that, okay? Just for now. So we're pretty much sorted in terms of the blue part of the sky. I might just bring another bit down here, maybe even just a little white mixed in with the blue, just to bring it down a little bit more. Soften that together. Drag some of that across in here, look. So we're really pretty much sorted now with the background of our sky. So that's the very top section of our sky done. Very pale. You can hardly see that now, but it's there, okay? I promise. Sometimes the lighter colours don't show through on camera. It's difficult to see them. But trust me, it's there. It's just a very light blue. Next, I'm going to use the same brush and I'm going to start focusing on this cloud here, okay? You can see that cloud. It's just like a dark grey with a bit of light going through it. Then it comes down into this area. So let's start with that. Let's start making a nice warm grey. It's a warm kind of a grey. So let's just take a little black and I mix everything in the same spot, okay? Little black and a little... Looking at that now, I can see it's a warm grey. So a warm grey for me is a little black with some white and a little crimson. Okay, tiny amount of crimson. That would give you a nice warm kind of a pinky grey. Okay, now it's very dry on my brush. I don't have any thinners in this. I'm just going to go up here and start. You see what I mean? And I'm just going around in little circles to make it kind of puffy. I'm going to come in like that. Now I'm going to soften this section very gently. I'm barely touching the canvas with the tip of my brush here, okay, look. Softening it down into that kind of bright colour down there. I'll come out a little bit further, I think. And I'm kind of pushing the edge of my brush out in circles. Okay? That's the kind of technique I'm doing here. Does that make sense? Now I'm going to add a little darker colour to this. I'm going to switch brushes, okay? That brush is a little bit too big now for what I want to do next, so I'm going to go with a slightly smaller brush. Something like a medium stubby brush would be absolutely fine for this. But I have one here, look. A medium brush is kind of splayed out. You see that? It's kind of sticking out. Perfect for clouds. Let's just dampen this and dry it. Then I'm going to make some slightly darker colours. I'm going to go with some black. Now, you want this pretty much almost dry, okay, this brush. Little black, little white, just to lighten it. I'll go with a tiny amount of crimson to warm it, and then to make it deeper, a little touch of phthalo blue, okay? Just a tiny, tiny, tiny touch, look. Now, let's go in here. In fact, a little touch more crimson. Now, let's go in here. So now I've more control with the smaller brush, you see. You can see that little dark area in there. A little bit more blue. And maybe a little more of the crimson. You can see that beautiful dark little shadows in the clouds. I'm doing the very same technique as I did with the bigger brush. It's just a smaller brush and smaller circles, that's all, okay? And I'll bring a little out here. Just to suggest some darkness in some of the outside clouds, look. A little bit here and there. So you can see that. Small little circles. Then we have this little one that kind of comes and flicks out. Like that. And this is all just about giving the sky some movement. That's all I'm trying to do here, okay? A little movement in that sky. Soften that right across there, look. And this then draws your eye across to the bigger cloud, you see. All right. Now I'm going to add one or two small streaks across the top through the darkness, okay? Or through that lightness, sorry. One or two small streaks, just to suggest very distant cloud high up in the atmosphere, drifting across the sky up there, okay? There we go. Now I want to warm it slightly. I'm going to take a tiny hint of magenta in that. The magenta is like a hint of pink, but it's a cool pink. Magenta is a very cool pink, okay? Completely different to crimson. Crimson is a warm kind of a pink. Magenta is cool. Lovely for winter scenes, that kind of stuff. But perfect now because I have that exact colour in my sky. I can see it. There's a little of that pink popping through here and there. So now, give the brush a little wipe. And so you can see what I'm doing now. I'm focusing on individual sections. That's all I'm doing. And I'm taking my time because I want it done nice. I'm going to go to a smaller brush. I'm going to go for a small stubby, okay? Small little stubby brush. If you don't have these, I can send them to you, okay? A full set, 3 brushes. Large, medium, small. Just let me know. They're beautiful because you can cup them in your hand like this, you see. They're really nice. I'm going to put some lights on some of these clouds because at the moment they look pretty flat. It's just like a grey cloud in the sky. It needs a bit of light. The light is coming from the right hand side here. So it's going to be on the outside edges of the clouds, okay? So I'm going to take a little white and I'm going to go with a little hint of crimson. Tiny hint, okay? That's too much. Just wipe it off, go back in there. And that hint of crimson will just give the cloud a bit of punch, a little bit of glow. So let me get my stick. I have a little stick here, look, simple little stick, just for leaning against. And what I'm going to do is just along the outside edges, again with little circular motions, just going to pop in some clouds, some highlights out there along the edges, look. Now clean your brush every so often, after every couple of strokes, because you're going to pick up that dark colour underneath. So you want this to stay nice and bright, so I'm going to just go right out to the outside edge, look, like that. And you're just getting the curvature of the cloud. It's catching the kind of the curves of the cloud, isn't it? Give it a wipe again. And then you could even go in here and put 1 or 2 in. So this is creating a new cloud separate from the rest, you see? And it's pushing everything else back. And then you can soften it down back into the cloud, okay? Letting it sort of disappear like that. Does that make sense? Now that's just a nice simple way of painting a cloud, a very effective cloud with some light. So each cloud, you know, if you look at the sky, clouds have lights and shadows, okay? Initially, it might look like they're just white, but if you look carefully, you can actually see that clouds have all these little highlights going through them, and that's what separates them from each other and makes them puffy. Makes clouds look like they're puffy clouds in the sky, because each section of cloud has tiny little highlights going through it like that, you see? Little highlights to separate the front cloud from the back cloud. Does that make sense? Now you can see already we have beautiful clouds in that side up there. And it was done very, very simply. Now I would even leave that as it is. I don't think it needs much more. Perhaps down at the bottom here, give 1 or 2 little flicks upwards, look. Just to suggest a little bit of light on those clouds down there. That's all. Nothing too complicated. So we're done with that cloud. The next one I'll do is this one here, because this one is kind of in the distance and this lower one comes in front of it, doesn't it? So it's always a good idea to work at the furthest point and work and bring up painting forward, okay? So you always work at the back clouds first and then you go over those with your front clouds. Am I making sense? So I'm with a clean medium brush You could use a large for this, but the medium will just give me a bit more control, I feel. I'm going to make it a nice warm mauve. Okay, you can see that. I'm going to take some phthalo blue. I have just a damp brush now, just a slightly damp brush, because remember, we already have oil on the canvas, so it's going to be slippery anyway. A little crimson. Now, I'm probably going to use more crimson than blue, okay? So, like, we're going for a nice warm plum. Little bit of white. The white will make this nice and opaque and chalky. And that's what gives you the covering power when painting. A little white. See? Now if you find it's too light, which that is, you then just go back in and take more colour. Take a little more crimson. Now we have a nice rich pink there. That's actually not bad. Look, it's like a mauve. A nice warm colour. Let's go up here now. Just give me a little test of this out. Yeah, I'll go with that. So I'm kind of looking at the medium colour in all of this, which is this kind of pinky colour. Then I can put darks and lights in over this. So now we have, look, little flicks coming up like that. And what I would do then is, you can see this very warm area. Let's just kind of go around that warm area and leave that white, okay? And we can mix in some very rich colours into that then later. So now I'm going to just take this colour, and if you need to mix more, just mix more. Look, more crimson, a little phthalo blue because it's very, very rich. Always add a little bit at a time because it's much easier to work from little pieces than it is to work from huge amounts. If you put loads into that, it's just going to overpower the mix completely and you'll be in trouble. So look, I'm going to go up here now and just suggest the little edges of that. And don't worry, I will be putting some darker colour on this side. I can see that's much darker. But I'm just using this colour as sort of my undercoat, my base. My base colour for the entire cloud. So I'm just going to mix a little bit more. A little phthalo blue. And again, don't worry if it's not exactly the same colour because we're going to be adding more colours to this, okay? So don't worry. Now I'm looking just to see how far I'm going to come down with all of this. I could probably come most of the way down. But I'm not too worried about coming all the way down because we have this line of cloud coming across, don't we? But it's still nice to have a little bit of a base underneath. So I'm going to keep it warm. That's a bit cold, isn't it? So let's get some more crimson. And let's pop that in. Nice, rich, plummy colour. And you can see it's kind of maybe slightly cooler than the colour up on top. So there we go. So we're getting there now. We're filling this in nicely. And I have a feeling this is going to turn out really nice. It's going to be a really nice, dramatic sky. Now I'm going to start introducing some magenta into the mix. And a little crimson. Because I can see there's a lot of this beautiful magenta colour in the painting. Or in the reference photograph, rather. So a little magenta, little tiny touch of the phthalo blue, a tiny amount. And that's kind of that cooler colour then. Just pop that in. As it comes down here, I'm going to start making it more blue, okay? You can see it's much cooler towards the bottom. So let's take a little phthalo blue with a little white. And you see I'm mixing some of the colour in from my brush. And soften that up. And then I'll soften it across into... I just took a little bit of white there with a little crimson, okay? So make a little pinky colour. And that'll soften nicely then into this colour that we have over here, you see? Now we have a couple of little clouds off in the distance. Let's just suggest one or two of those. Look very loosely with that brush, you see? Just very loosely. And soften it across. That's coming on quite nice now, isn't it? So, I have the kind of base colour done. What I'm going to do next now is I'm going to start putting in the cooler shades and the darker shades. Yes? Much darker. So, a bit more blue in the mix this time. Again, I didn't clean my brush. I'm going to pick up some crimson. Let's go for a little magenta as well. And then let's take a little phthalo blue. And I'm going to start adding a little bit more blue this time. So, tiny extra amounts of phthalo blue. And just keep looking at the reference photograph and your palette. And try to think, yeah, is that that's somewhere close to what I need? It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but when it's close, that's all you need. Okay, so let's go up here now. And you see, I'm going to pop that colour a little bit over there. I'm going to soften it into this colour then. I'm not going to put in prominent brush strokes. It's going to kind of soften in to this warmer section over here. So just softening it across. Okay, let's pick up a bit more colour. It's still a bit pinky. Let's get some more phthalo blue and a little magenta. It's a much cooler, more purpley kind of blue, isn't it? And let's go over here and let's get this really nice. Like that. Now, I'm going to soften that colour back in over here again. Okay, it's not bad. Now, one thing I want to do is, I want to take the harshness out of this, because it's very kind of solid, isn't it? So I'm going to take my my large blender brush, and I'm just going to gently, if I can, I hope there's not paint on this, if I can gently sort of soften that back into the canvas. Just slightly. Just along some of the edges up there, and maybe along the top, look, soften it up into the sky. And that just takes the harshness out of the cloud, doesn't it? Now you could even use your brush for this as well. Just take a little light colour on my brush, just sort of soften it across. Like that, you see? Okay. Now I'm going to go darker. I'm going to start adding some darker colour. A little more blue, a little more magenta, and a little more pink. Crimson. It's getting slightly darker, slightly richer. I may add a tiny amount of black, okay? Tiniest little amount. And I'm going to start adding some little, you see, some little flicks for clouds, because there are some very dark sections here and there, aren't there? Like some of the backs of these are quite dark, aren't they? And I'm going to suggest some darkness back in here. Just kind of flicking the brush around, you see? Flicking it around. Like so. That's creating kind of the impression of cloud in there. And I'll come up here, I might add a little bit across the top of that. And then soften that down. I know it's quite warm over here, so I don't want to kind of overdo it on this side. Alright, okay. We have a nice warmth coming down there like that. I'm going to start taking a little crimson perhaps. And just putting a little warmer colour. Sort of coming down at a slight angle like that. Because it shows the direction of the cloud then coming down and swooping around. Okay? Does that make a little sense? So I'm just trying to give the impression of the cloud kind of swirling and turning. You see that? And another thing to remember as well is, if you look at the clouds we have coming across here, you can see there's one very bright one, isn't there? If you look at the reference photograph. And they have very bright outside lines. So what you want to do then is have a nice dark background here. So then that all of that really shows up. So I'm going to darken it just ever so slightly with some phthalo blue, some crimson, little magenta, and perhaps a tiny amount of black as well. And I'm going to just darken a little bit around here, okay? Then that will give us a really beautiful bright cloud in front of that. So I'm going to soften it across. I see some of that colour down the bottom. I'll add a tiny amount of magenta to it, and I can see that nice colour in those clouds down here, you see? So as I have it on my brush, I'm just going to pop them in like this, look. Let that soften across, and then I'm going to soften it downwards into that colour, very gently, hardly touching the canvas, okay? Then I might darken again down here. And I'm going to, no, I'm not worried about that, that's okay. I'm going to just soften that across like that. And that gives a lovely impression of the cloud swooping up into the stormy cloud, doesn't it? Isn't that lovely? So we're getting there. Now, let me see. I'm thinking now, what should I do next? I think I might start working on some of the light in this cloud. I think it's a good idea. I'll put this brush to one side. I'll use this for my darker colours, and I'll get another brush for some of my lighter colours, okay? I think that's good practice, because we'll never get that brush exactly clean, perfectly clean. We never will. I'm going to take another brush, clean, soft, synthetic brush, okay? And I'm going to start mixing some of the warm colours. So this now is where it really comes to life. Dampen the brush and just dry it on some tissue, okay? Just give it a good dry. So it's only just damp, barely damp. Let's get some Naples yellow. I'm going to start working on these rich warm colours now. So first I'm going to start off with Naples yellow and lots of pink, okay? Lots of crimson in there. I can see that colour right away. And you need to be very careful with this because we have plum. We don't want to put a pure yellow into this because it'll go muddy and green. So I'm going to keep it more pinky. Okay, so you could say 80% crimson, 20% Naples yellow. So it's like a salmon colour, pinky kind of a salmon colour, you see that? So you start with that colour. That colour will then mix into what we have really nicely, you see. And you won't get any messy colours. You see what I mean? Because we have a lot of pink in the mix. So you see now how that just mixed in there beautifully. If I had a lot of Naples yellow in this mix, you would see a very messy, greeny, muddy kind of a greeny colour. So start off with a nice kind of a pink. And look, I'm going to soften this then back into the sky here and there. I'm just going around in little circles, look, little circles. And I'm following the curvature as well at the same time. So as I'm doing my little circles, look, I'm following the curvature coming down, you see? So I'm kind of doing two things at once, if you like. Because I don't want to lose that kind of direction of the cloud. So you can see now already, we're starting to get that lovely glow, aren't we? So let's go back into our mix. We have Naples yellow, probably too much. Naples yellow, little crimson. And I'm going to start making it a little bit more on the yellowy side. Look, so I'm moving more yellow into the mix, okay? Just a little more, that's all. And I think the focus of this painting will be this lovely warm glow that we have in the sky. So I'm just going to go around in circles, soften that in there. Okay, and even come out a little bit more. And then come out into your sky. See, I'm moving into the pink and I'm moving it all around. So now we have that beautiful transition, you see? We're getting there. And it takes time, it takes a lot of time, but we're getting there. Okay, I'm cleaning my brush. I'm going to go over and perhaps do this nice bright one that we have in here, okay? So I think I'll go to my smaller brush that I had earlier, perhaps. So I'll try this brush here. And I'm going to mix a very bright pink for this. So crimson with plenty of white. Because we have a blue. We can't put really a very bright yellowy colour on this. So I'm thinking just crimson with white and perhaps a tiny amount of this here just to warm it ever so slightly. Okay, so it's a very light pink but a warm pink, look. Again, there's more pink in the mix. Let's go up here and get this nice bright cloud in. So we get that, like that. Now clean our brush again, just to take that colour off before we go back in. And we have another one here. And the trick is not to mix too much, okay? If I started mixing that together now, it would just disappear and I would lose what I'm doing. So the trick with this kind of wet into wet technique is to just put on 1 or 2 brush strokes and leave it. Because if you start mixing and mixing and mixing, you'll end up losing your colour, okay? You will just lose it. It'll disappear into the colour underneath. Let's get a little pink and a little of that yellow. You see? So it's just a warm pink. And I'm going to come down here, put that in. You can see it just kind of there, okay? Come down that side. And you can just leave it like that, because the rest is covered in with this dark cloud, isn't it? So you can leave it like that for a moment. Now what I'm going to do is mix a slightly darker colour for some of the shades in there. So I'm going to take some phthalo blue, some crimson, some magenta, a little crimson, and I'm thinking even more on the red side, so a bit more magenta but crimson, a tiny amount of blue, okay? And I'm just going to give these a little shadow. So I'm going to go on the dark side of the cloud because the sun is coming from here, so this is going to be the dark side of all these clouds here, okay? You see? Just like that. And I'm softening them then just down into the colour gently. And again, up here, soften them out into that lighter colour. Okay? So you can see now we have some lovely little clouds. Now with a slightly bigger brush, okay, a clean brush, I'm just going to softly merge them together just a little. Just very gently. I don't want to lose my shape. And then what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take a small brush, alright? A nice small detailed brush. Let me see. I'll go with a little round look. Okay? Just for a bit of detail. And then what I'm going to do is take some of this lighter colour, add a bit of white to that, and these are going to be my nice bright highlights up here. Okay? I'm going to go up here and I'm just going to put some of these highlights. You see? Just around that cloud. just around the outside where the sun is kind of coming up and catching those clouds, you see? Isn't that gorgeous? I just put a little bit on, just a little. Okay, now it's not a yellowy colour, again there's more pink in the mix, but it's just a slightly lighter shade to create those little puffy clouds and soften them back then slightly into your sky, okay? Into the rest of the cloud, rather. Now isn't that just wonderful? Look at that. So that's really going to stand out then, you see, against the dark background. Now we have another one next to it here, which is more of a darker, bluey kind of a cloud. But before I move on to that, I want to just get some of these nice, warm, rich clouds done over here, all right? I'm going to move back to a slightly bigger brush, okay? And I'm going to start putting in some very bright colour first with some Naples yellow, a little white. We'll just go in here first with that colour, right in the corner, okay? Very bright, bright, bright glow right there. Take a tiny amount of cadmium yellow as well. And then lots of white. There we go. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is start putting those lights. You see those lights on the clouds? I'm going to start putting some of those in. And let me think about what brush we need to use now for this. I'm going to use, this one is a bit too big, I think. I want to try and get some control and some detail. This one might be better. I think it might be better. Maybe a bit too small. I'll go for the next size up, okay? This is about a number, let me see, number 4. This is about a number 6 flat, all right? Something similar. If you go too small, you're going to be like this. But if you go too big, then you can't get the shapes that you want. So something kind of just in between. I'm going to start with a nice, rich, bright colour. Let's get some. Let's go down here into this Naples yellow. Let's get some of that white. Lots of that white. And because we're going into this colour, I want to just add a hint of crimson. Okay? I'm not going for pure whitey yellow colours just yet. I'm just going for this kind of a salmon colour first. We have a lovely one up here, look. Just put the general shape of that in. Then come down. Leave it sort of disappear off. We have another one then, which creeps in just up here. Then I'm going to just leave that disappear. Clean your brush, just to keep it clean, okay? Just to keep it nice and clean. I'm going to put another one in here. And that just kind of comes down. And you see the technique I'm using is just little circles. I'm just pulling the outsides in. You see? Now, dry your brush and then let's just soften those back into the sky, okay? You see? And the same with this one, little circles, soften it back in. Just with the tip of the brush. I'm just swirling the tips of my hairs around and around like that, you see? Gently softening them in. You can. This is a nice tutorial. You could take your time with this now and create a really dramatic sky for your painting. Okay? Let me just sit back now and take a look at this. That's really nice now. I'm happy with that. Alright, let's keep going now. We're on a roll. I can see a slightly warmer colour in there. So I want to make it nice and warm. Some Naples yellow, some crimson. Okay, I see a nice warm kind of a pink coming into the cloud here. You see that warm colour there? I just want to add a touch of that in. Just to one side of the cloud. It's a really beautiful colour. You see? It's a kind of a pink just showing through. So I'm just going to kind of drag it very gently through the cloud. Not going to the edge. Okay, just kind of behind that light colour and then soften it out into your sky. Because we have some beautiful rich colours going on up there, don't we? We have some very rich colours going on down the bottom as well. Let's try some crimson. I'm going to take some cadmium red as well this time. And I might try a little tiny touch of cadmium yellow. And then Naples yellow, because the cadmium yellow and the cadmium red will give us a really warm colour. Okay? Now I want to come down here and just put that warm. Oh, that's nice, I like that. That's a lovely colour. Now that really complements the sky, doesn't it? And I can see lots of that rich colour bouncing around in the cloud behind there. I'm going to pop a little bit in here as well. And I might even add a hint over here, just to complement the sky, that will draw your eye across. Okay? Just to have similar colours going across your painting. So I'm going to just soften that now, ever so slightly. Soften it out. Little circles again, just little circles. You don't have to go this far now. You don't have to do all of this work if you feel that it's too much for you. Okay? You can just keep it simple yourself. Now, I want to put a little dark clouds in here, just one or two. I'm going to take some of that darker pink that we had, or the dark kind of a purple colour. Maybe add a bit more pink to it. And I just want to add a little shadow to some of these. A little more pink. Because these have a lot of shadows as well. These little individual clouds down here, there's a lot of shadow going through those clouds. Because where you have a light side of a cloud, you're going to have a little bit of shadow as well at the same time. So I'm just popping a little bit in, just with my bigger brush, just for a moment. Come down then into this, look. We can just get lost in these clouds down here. So, let me just soften that back in, just for a moment. You see? Soften them back out into your sky. So now we're really starting to get somewhere, aren't we? It's really coming alive, isn't it? The next thing I'm going to do is start putting some more brights on. Okay, with this brush. Let's get some nice brights again. So I've put in some brights, but I'm going to strengthen those brights now and go even brighter with them again. Let's take some white. Let's take some Naples yellow. And again, a tiny amount of crimson. So I have a lot more yellow in this mix now this time. And I'm just going to pick out the edges of some of those clouds, okay? Just pick out some of the edges. Beautiful one up here, that's nice and strong again. You just kind of allow that to show through again a little. One or two just kind of subtle ones on their own. Then I'll take some white. I'll take a little bit of white and add some really bright ones. Just where it goes into this colour here, okay? Look, really white, right, whitey yellow kind of colours. And then I'm going to just very gently soften them back in. I'm leaving the edges of them, okay? I'm leaving the edges as they are, but I'm just pulling the colour back into the rest of the cloud. Just gently. Because I don't want to lose that very bright edge, okay? I want to keep that lovely sharp edge on clouds. So just pull the rest of it back and sort of outwards, okay? And my coffee is calling me. My coffee is over there looking at me. I think I'm going to have to get a sup of coffee. I love a coffee, do you know that? Or a cappuccino even. Right, I'm going to add a little bit of that colour to these edges here. I'm going to soften it back in. I want to make this cloud a little more on the puffy side, so a little softer. You see? Just a little softer. And I want to go up and just add a couple of more nice ones in there. So I'll go with some Naples yellow again, some white, a little of the pink. Now because we're going back into the bluey side of our cloud, I want to make it again, I want to make it more pink, okay? So there's not much yellow. It's again a salmon colour. And I just want to add one or two. Just one like that, we'll say. It's not on the reference photograph, but I think one more here would help. Just to break up the dark side of the sky just a little bit, okay? I think it would really help. And maybe just one or two just down here, okay? So they're now in front of the other clouds. You see what I mean? And it's all just about creating separate layers of cloud. And let that just kind of disappear back into the cloud, okay? So there we go. Now this is a bit round. Let's just mess that up slightly. And how was that? Nice rich colours. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to start with this nice dark cloud we have in here. I might stay with this brush even. Okay, let's go with some blue. I must get more pink on my palette, more crimson. I have no crimson left. I'm going to go with that nice dark cloud just next to this one here. See that? Very rich dark colour, isn't it? Crimson and phthalo blue. More on the phthalo blue side, okay? Because as we've seen earlier, it's really dark. There, you see? That's not bad, that colour. Let's go up here, like that. Let's take a tiny bit more pink, actually, just to warm it slightly. It's a little bit cool. And then, it comes up like that. Then it comes down, and it goes off over here, doesn't it? Like so. And as it comes across, I'm going to add a little bit more pink. Just as it comes over. Look, I'm going to warm it more and more as it comes over into the warm area of the sky. You see? So now, little circles, let's bring that down. Down to our horizon line. Up here, and I'm going to warm it again a little bit and add some white. So I'm just lightening it slightly. Okay, there we go. Now, I want to get that nice rich dark blue that we have there. You see that? That's beautiful, isn't it? I'm going to take some phthalo blue with a little cobalt and some, let's go with some magenta. It's a really beautiful, rich blue, isn't it? It just kind of goes into that cloud behind, you see? And then it just disappears down. Now, how was that? That's lovely, isn't it? I'm going to just finish this cloud and then we move on to this thick one here. Are you enjoying this tutorial? It's quite nice, isn't it? I really love these in-depth tutorials. So it's basically just take some white, add a little white into that colour that we mixed earlier. Okay, so it's a light blue. And let's just go and put that light blue around the edges of some of these clouds here, look, just like that. And it'll soften down into the dark area then. Okay, now clean the brush again. And let's go again. Another bright just here on the tips, the outside edges of the clouds. Now let's soften this one in here, Just dab, 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 dab. Very gently. Soften it in. Then I'm going to come over here, add some highlights to some of those clouds. Soften them in. Then what I'm going to do is take an extra lighter colour. I'm going to get some white with cobalt blue and a tiny hint of magenta. And that's going to be our nice cool highlight colour for these clouds over here. So you can see now how I'm just putting one in front of the other. So this is going to be one cloud here. Alright, I'm going to soften that down and across. Look. Alright, so that's one. And let me just soften the back one there. Then clean the brush, go back into that colour. Then we put another one in front of that, you see. Just going around in little circles, that's all. And that's what gives you then the different layers of clouds. So I'm softening each one down into the canvas underneath, okay? Down into that sky underneath. Then I'm going to go in front of that one again. So let's take some white, a little phthalo blue, a little magenta, and I'll show you. So then I'll go in front of that one again, creating a new layer of cloud, you see? And that then pushes those other ones behind, you see? It pushes them back. So you can do the same thing over on this side. I'll show you. We put, look, some nice bright clouds. I'm keeping the outside edges. I'm not losing those edges, okay? And then soften the rest of it down. Then let's try some white. Let's get a tiny hint of crimson. And try some nice warm light clouds off in the distance. Like that, look. Again, soften the bases of those down. I'm going to get some crimson on this now because we have some nice warm cloud off there. Look, you see that? Coming down. And just try to have a bit of fun, you know? Just try to enjoy it a little bit because it's supposed to be fun. If you're going to be very stressed out and very highly strung trying to paint landscapes and stuff like that, you know, it's not doing you any good. You need to try to relax and simplify it. Try to enjoy it, okay? That's the most important part of any painting. You have to enjoy what you're doing. I'm going to add a little bit of light pink to some of these, alright? And I'm going to add a little bit of light pink up here to the top one. See, just here and there. Because the colour from that sky will be reflecting back onto the cloud. And I'm going to put some light pink on these as well. And the next thing I'm going to do then is take a soft brush and try and soften some of these back. Now I have a slightly smaller soft brush here, look. I'm going to just try and pull some of these, soften them back into each other just slightly. And then you see that dark area? I'm going to just kind of flick that very gently out. That will suggest the cloud kind of flicking outwards, the wind pushing it out. So now I'm going to just soften some of these with my soft brush. And I'm kind of merging them together very slightly, okay? I'm leaving some of those edges, those top edges, because that's the shape of the cloud, so I'm leaving those. But I'm just softening the bottom halves down. We'll go up and soften this one here. So now we're getting some really nice soft clouds, aren't we? There, look at that. Isn't that wonderful? How about that? Now you could do the same with these, because we have a lot of brush strokes in there which we don't want. You know, I want to keep the softness of the sky. So it's a very turbulent sky, but I want to give the impression of it being kind of soft and merging together slightly here and there. So I'm very gently, look, just pulling the brush strokes out, coming around like that. You see, and that gives you the direction of the cloud kind of swirling upwards and out, doesn't it? Now, I don't want to overdo this, obviously, just take your time. And there we go. Now I'll do more work on these ones here as well, okay? You can add a lot more to them. Let's get some more light. Okay, let's try some more light. Some of that nice bright pink. And we can, you see, you can add a lot more detail to some of those. I'll mix up some colour. Let's get some pink with some white. Okay, pink and white. That's all. Nice and simple, pink and white. Let's add just to sort of the right hand sides of those clouds, okay? So even though you may have lost it when you were blending in, you can just put them back in again. It's very, very simple. See? And then just very gently pull out the brush strokes, okay? Leaving the outside edges, but just pull out some of the brush strokes if you want. You don't have to, but if you want. I like to pull some of them back out. You see? Just a little. Now we have this big section here. Let's go with our bigger brush. Let's mix a nice rich blue for this. Okay, phthalo blue, lots of it. Little tiny bit of turpentine, not too much. If you feel your brush is too wet, just give it a quick dab on the tissue. That takes off some of the moisture out of your brush. Let's go with magenta. Plenty of magenta, plenty of phthalo blue. And I'm going to give it a little splash of black, okay? But again, plenty of blue and plenty of magenta. The black will just take the richness out of it and just dull it down ever so slightly. Now, let me go like that. Let me have a look. Okay, I'm going to get more magenta. I need to add a tiny bit of magenta into this. So let me pull some of that out. There, I think that's better. Slightly warmer. I'm going to go with that very dark ridge there. Okay? I'm going to go right across like that. Soften it into my sky. Then I'm going to go right up with this dark colour. So this dark colour now is going to be the dark of the clouds, okay? So I'm going right up and out of the painting. Then I'm going to come across like that. It kind of comes down slightly. And over like this, you see? Disappears across into that then. Now I'm even going to put some black and some blue across the base of this, because it really is that dark. It's really, really a blacky kind of a blue. Soften that up. Then with my small round detailed brush, we get some more of that colour, a little bit of magenta, and we have a nice dark section of that coming across here. Don't be popping into the painting here and out. Isn't that lovely? I love that darkness that just shows through there. It's really eye-catching, isn't it? Come up slightly and then take some of that rich colour, that magenta, just pop some magenta through here. See, that's just really darkening it up, isn't it? Giving it lots of life. Okay, so we have the dark. Now let me actually just put a hint of that colour on the back of some of these clouds here, because it's a really lovely colour. I really like it. There we go. Soften it out. It's a really nice colour. That's the dark section of it done. Now let's move on to the lighter section. Okay, another brush. You see, these brushes are very similar in size. So I've one for my darker blues and one for my light colours. Okay, it's just much easier. It saves a lot of cleaning. Let's take some white, go down into that colour, then take lots more phthalo blue. Little touch of magenta with crimson perhaps. Now, just clean my brush. I need to get more phthalo blue on my palette. Just a little. And a little more white. So now we're going to, this section now, I'm going to show you just simple kind of clouds in the sky, okay? If you're painting nice simple clouds, just take some white, a little phthalo blue. And when doing this, what I would say is, okay, I have a nice light blue there now, look. So what I do is then I start on the outside edges, look, putting in my puffy clouds. So I'm going over the darkness, you see? Then I'm going to soften them down into the darker colours. And that gives you lots of different tones going through your clouds. Now it's getting mucky, so clean it. Then go back in, you see, and then pulling them out to create new clouds, pulling them down, and it's picking up the darkness, then creating shadows and all different types of swirly marks, you see? Isn't that amazing? And that's a nice simple cloud. If you're painting a regular landscape now, and you want a nice simple cloud, that's perfect. I'll take a little hint of magenta in that colour. See? And I'm going up here and out of the painting. And then bring it back down into your darks. And then it just kind of disappear. You see? Now I'm going to clean my brush again. Then I'm going to pick up some more lighter colour. Some white again, some phthalo blue, a little magenta. But plenty of white in this, okay? Now I'm going to create a new layer of cloud. So I'm going right into my darks and I'm pushing the edge of my brush out and around, okay, to create the outside edge of the clouds. You see? Then I'm going to soften those down. Back into the dark. So now we have another new layer of cloud. Next I'm going to go to a slightly smaller brush, okay? Just to get more detail and a bit more puffy clouds in there. Go back in with that light blue. And I'm going to start out here, look. See, now I have more control with my smaller brush. I'm going to give it lots of nice little puffy clouds. I come over here, I'll put one or two in here as well. And it's so much fun doing this, it really is. Because in reality, it's actually very, very simple. You're only just going around in little circles. If you can master the technique of going around in little circles with your brush, after that, it's basically just a case of getting the form and the shape of the cloud just right. Do you understand? That's the important part. You know, going around in little circles, this is the easy part. But getting the shape of the cloud just right is very important, okay? Because it needs to look like a little puffy cloud. So you can see now, I'm just kind of going through lots of little circles, creating lovely little clouds. And then, what I do is, soften, pull them out, just soften them out ever so slightly. Okay, you see? I'm going to pull this one this way to encourage the viewer's eye to come into the centre of the painting, okay? So I'm going to soften these ones first, like this. Then I'm going to go back in and get some more light colour. Some white, little phthalo blue, little magenta. And I'm going to start adding some of that nice colour. We get some pink actually, a little bit of pink might be nice. Around here, look. Just to break up the cloud. Then I put one or two around the edges over here. Some crimson and some white. I want to warm some of the clouds over here, okay? Just one or two. And I'm going to put more in front of this cloud, look. So we're getting lots of little puffy clouds now. And I'm going to then add some of that bright pink on some of the edges of these ones over here. So you're just lightening as you go, you see, you're just adding light spots on the outside edges, you see. And remember to clean your brush every time you add a new piece on, because you're just picking up the darker colour from underneath. So just, see, clean the brush and then go back into fresh colour again. Add a little bit down there, but not too much. Then I'm going to just soften those very gently outwards, okay? Again, I don't want to lose the lights, but I just don't want too many brush strokes in this. And you can keep going with this as much as or as little as you like, okay? It's completely up to yourself. Now, for one last piece, I'm going to take a very small pointy brush, okay? A really small detailed brush. And I'm going to get some really nice colours going in here now. I'm going to start with this. Let me just clean my little pointy brush. So my turpentine is dirty now. My turpentine is very bluey. So I'm going to avoid dipping this in turpentine. So some Naples yellow and some white. I'm going to go up here. Just add little amounts of that to some of these clouds, just underneath where it's really catching the sun. Okay? I'll put one here, like that. I'll put one just around here, and one along here. And then you see what I do is I soften those very gently back into the cloud. Okay? Just kind of pulling the colour back, softening it back in, but leaving the edge. And that really does give some life to the cloud, doesn't it? I'm going to do the same with these ones down here, just with some white and a little phthalo blue, okay? So a nice bright colour. So let's start with this one here, okay? See, just go around the edge. And that really acts as a nice highlight. And it just gives that extra little bit of punch to the cloud. A little bit. Now you don't have to overdo this, okay? You don't have to go crazy with this, but it really does brighten up the clouds and give them some life. Okay? Now let's just soften some of them back in. We don't want them sticking out too much. But yeah, I think that's quite nice, isn't it? Okay. Let's go down and do one or two at the bottom. I think it needs a couple just along the horizon line, off over there, very far away. So who knew that a cloud tutorial could be such fun? You know? Who knew? I'm going to soften some of these actually together because they are so far away, really. You're not going to see much detail on the edges of some of these clouds because these are just miles and miles away. Okay, now let's peel off our tape, look at that. And let's pop in this water. Now the water is really very simple, okay? It's just, let's start with a nice dark line across here. Take my large brush, I'm going to mix some phthalo blue with a little magenta. Now a little bit of turpentine in this. Remember, I didn't oil this section down here, okay? So it's going to kind of dry in slightly or even soak in. So you can oil it if you like. Let's take a little hint of black, okay? Let me just take a look at this now. That's not bad. A little tiny more of the magenta, okay? So now you can see, because I didn't oil it, you see the difference? I'll move to a smaller brush, come on. Let's make life a little easier for ourselves, yes? Little blue, little magenta. There we go. Now, how about this? Now more magenta. And I'm going to start lightening this. Little magenta, little white. I'm going to go with that first. I'm going to put that in. So it's basically just replicating some of the colours you have in the sky. Okay? So look, we have some nice pink here. Let's put some nice pink down here. And I'm just keeping this simple now, yes? Just very, very simple. And the canvas is really dry. So it's making me work. It really is making me work. Let me get some thinners. There we go. And let me just thin this paint now really well so we can really get some nice coverage in this. Okay, there we are. Now that's better. And if I didn't prime this canvas the way I did, this would be so dry. It would just soak up every little bit of paint that I have. Let's get some phthalo blue. Little thinners, some white. And I'm going to pop that in through here. As you can see, it's just a nice light blue. Again, some thinners, some white. Let's go up here and pop some of that blue across. Bring it down. Then take a little pink. Pop a little pink through there. I'll take some magenta. Pop a little bit of magenta through there, because it's just a very quick impression of the reflection of the sky. Do you understand? That's all it is. And more white on my brush. I'm going to take some white, a little crimson, and I'm going to take a little Naples yellow, and I'm going to pop that warm pink in over here, you see, just to reflect that light up in the sky there. Yes? And take a bit more. Naples yellow, little crimson. Pop a bit more in there. I won't go into my blue too much because that'll end up going green. Okay, remember? And I'll bring a little amount of it across here, just slightly. Now, that's all I need to do. Really, it's just that simple. Alright? Next I'm going to, before we finish, let's put a little boat. Yes? How about a little sailboat? Miles and miles off. Let's just take some white. Where should we put it? Let's put it just here. A bright white sailboat, miles off in the distance. Okay. Sailing off into the ocean. Isn't that lovely? And just a little black then, just for the base of the boat, okay? Because it needs something to sit on, doesn't it? And then we have to put a little tiny reflection in, don't we? Let's just take a little white on our brush and just pop a little tiny bit of white through there. You see? It's just nice and simple, isn't it? And there we are, my friends. Now I'm going to soften that just ever so slightly. Don't want it too prominent. And I'm also going to soften one or two of these just gently, okay? I feel they're a little bit too prominent, a little bit too pronounced. And you can keep going and going with these clouds if you wish, adding extra little lights in, you know, extra little shadows. But I hope I've helped you learn just to create nice clouds. And if you just take your time, you know, try not to rush them too much, just take your time. It will be worth it, I promise. And there we are, my friends. I think that's a success. A nice simple sky. Warm colours, cool colours, popping in. What I might do is maybe just sort out that one a little. It seems to be just, I don't know, it just don't seem to be fitting in quite right. I think I need to add a little bit of a pinky colour to it, just to help it fit in a little bit better. Look, a little bit of light pink, and then maybe a little of the blue just through that grey, okay? This pinky kind of colour, just through the grey. Just to kind of help it fit in with the rest of the painting. Does that make sense? Look, just a tiny, tiny bit. And then we can soften it back in. There. Yeah, that's helped. And there we go, my friends. I must sign it. I'm very proud of this one. This is a nice one. S. Conway. Don't forget to sign your paintings, because I've forgotten to sign my paintings many times, and it's quite embarrassing when somebody comes to buy a painting and it's not signed. So thank you very much. Let me turn the camera here now so you can see my... Oh, sorry. There we go. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed that. It's been so much fun. It really has. Thank you so much for your support. It means so much to me. You're very, very kind and very generous. It really means so much to me personally, and it's helping me do all of this. So thank you so much. Let me know what you think. Will that stay there? It's probably not going to stay there. Let me know what you think. Give it a try. Just have a bit of fun. Try and loosen up a little bit with your brush, and try not to get it too perfect all the time. Just let the brush go where the brush wants to go, okay? I will be back very soon with another tutorial. Thank you so much, and God bless, my friends. Take care and stay safe.